wanted to actually ask about DeFaro. You're running an enterprise that is, you're running, oh, perfect, an example. This is good. Get some product placement in here. Bring that in close. Let's see if we can see what's going on. So this is the DeFaro date spread.
How do you do?
Yeah, that's good.
So it's a date spread in space.
Right.
Basically, and it even matches. It's like almost. It's almost like I did it on purpose.
Right. This is good branding. But so your enterprise, you're employing women from the refugee community. You're making date-based products. You are expanding to, was it 46 locations in the US and the West Coast, and it's amazing to see that kind of work. And honestly, when I had heard just that you had an enterprise that was trying to focus on creating opportunities for people who are marginalized, that's, you know, I wanted to have you on the podcast just because of that. But I'd like to hear your opinion, your perspective about how social entrepreneurship can be a force for good, because this is something that I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily accept. There's, even for myself, going into a startup, building my own startup, I've had this concept, of course, I want to do things better. I have very specific values in mind, but I want people to be able to understand that perspective as much as possible. What are your thoughts as far as social entrepreneurship as a force for good?
My thoughts are that it's one of the keys to unlocking, you know, a sustainable world in the future, right? Because part of this social entrepreneurship means inclusive employment practices. It means a green supply chain, sourcing, everything. It means rerouting traditional profits and putting them into a sustainable way of having impact, whatever you choose that impact to be. Many social enterprises are environmental. There's so many. The faces of social entrepreneurship are thousands, hundreds of thousands. And so how I see it is really a way to make both ends sustainable. It's also the direction that commerce is going in general. So I was reading about consumers, and Gen Z are about to be the largest consumer base in the world. You look at the Middle East, and last time I saw that statistic was that something like 70% of the population is under 35 years old. And in North America, you see them as agents of change for what they stand for, what brands they represent, what brands they tattoo on their body, and so it's turning into a point where it will become a non-negotiable. Obviously, it really depends on the income level, the purchasing power of the person buying the product. You can't afford to be picky when all you can afford is one type of food. Of course, there's a threshold. But there are many ways to build products, services, and supply chains that make it inclusive for everyone. Now, what the let's say the negative side to that is that the ecosystem is not catching up. And what I mean by that is, like, I have a food-based social enterprise. So from this jar of date spread, it's no sugar added. So like the type of ingredients and the farming practices and the quality sourced are like very rigorous and strict. From this, we use the sales of this to fund education programs for refugee and trafficked women and create those programs. And it's a lot of work. It's expensive. It's not easy to make a product that is the same or even more affordable market value while having all these qualities. There's a reason why there's fillers and things added to it. And from a consumer perspective, it's great, right? They love it. They love that they're doing good things. The reason why I started this was really like vulnerable community support. So I feel comfortable with it. But now when I go to the supermarket chain and I want to sell my product, well, the problem is they apply the same rules that they do with traditional products. They want the same amount of, so in this industry, you either pay for your shelf or you give free product the first time. You give a whole case of your free product per store to the grocery store. If it sells, then they'll order from you paid. They require very expensive promotional things. And how do we afford that? How do we remain competitive? And when the consumer wants what we want, and when we're providing something good, but obviously by default, the margins are lower, and now the traditional industry treats us as traditional.
Yeah.
That's where I see the roadblock, practically. I don't think it's fair that the distributors and the stores and everything else in the supply chain treats you as just like profit generating business, because we're doing so much more. And it's not possible to have that type of cash flow and just on a practical perspective. So that's where I see the roadblock. That's where I really think the systemic change, if it's a product-based business, will have to come in the supply chain. I give the example of food, but like food, you can have candles, you can have furniture, you can have whatever it is. I know so many social entrepreneurs in different fields. And so I really think that there needs to be some more systematic change, because and it's not just in the form of B Corp, because we work with B Corps, and sorry to say, but even in how they do their procurement, it's just as intense and cuts our margins. So that's I would say the pros and the cons and what really needs to be changed, because the consumers have changed their mind, the entrepreneurs are ready to create things, even investors are changing their mind, they're adapting, but now we need the practical side. Like, how do you move product and how do you sell product? That needs to change, because you can't keep fitting in that same shoe.
That's agreed. There are a lot of the models that we have economically, logistically, they're outdated, and we don't think about exactly how outdated until we're really trying something different. And then again, that lack of flexibility, that lack of adaptation that exists in a tried and true system. This is just how you do it. These are the rules. Like, who says you really want to risk your profit margins because you want to do something that was thought up 60, 70 years ago and you can't even tell me why you do it?
Yeah.
Like these, and it's not just products, it's services, it's everything that is absolutely changing. And I agree 100% that we need to be able to analyze these complex systems, because that's part of what the circular economy is about. It's about every stage of the process being holistically broken down as individual mechanical elements that, you know, if one distributor, as you've described, or one grocery store chain is doing things this way, there should be enough flexibility in the system, enough competitors that have the opportunity to really think about doing things differently. Otherwise, you don't have that robust flexibility. You don't have that competitive edge that is what capitalism is supposed to be about. And it's something that's been missing to a large extent from capitalism, is that ability to experiment and try things and fail and have lots of other competitors doing the exact same sort of experimentation. We've gotten to a point where we've just broken up the existing market between a couple of players, and they will do things how they have been doing things because they've got all the market. And it's even that is changing dramatically. So I do hope that people can be sort of more aware of that and sort of involving themselves in this process, because I've seen a lot of enterprise lately making really sort of drastic changes because someone will come onto the scene. And for example, Generate is a current browser that is putting out ad-free alternatives in which any user using Generate can have their entire online experience ad-free. If they want, they can do what everyone else is doing. They can have, you know, personalized ads, cookies to a degree, but it'll be based on what they actually want, and they get paid for it. The user gets that profit share, 70 to 90% of it, and Generate gets the 30 to 10. And that is going to murder all of the classic advertising firms that have been using the ubiquitousness of the tracking cookie to just continue doing business as it's been done. It's a model that's antiquated and that is annoying and that consumers don't want. If it's my data, then I should get paid for it, or no one should get paid for it. It's not for sale. And the fact that we've got consumers looking at these systems is fascinating to me. Thank you for taking the time to answer that question and for putting up with my rambly response. It's really fascinating to me to sort of hear it from such a different sector of a startup from my own, because my own is very much content and service based. It's interesting to see those kinds of roadblocks that are experienced when you're creating a product.
And I think part of the problem also maybe stems from like truly identifying which are social enterprises, because outside of 4 or 5 countries, there's no legal entity to say that you're a social enterprise. And TBD on whether they're, like in the UK they have, but even the regulations are very strict. Of 51% of profits go back to the venture. Well, that limits you from many investors. Maybe you're making incredible impact, but it's not exclusively from a profit side. So in parallel to Dafero now, and this is the first time I'm openly talking about it, I'm working with a former intern of Dafero, now turned colleague, to create the first global certification program for social enterprises to help them clearly identify what they stand for, and help them also building up communities where they can interact with peers in a very like peer-to-peer way and manner, and hopefully this experiment and new idea and launch will help push the movement forward and be something like a fair trade, something like what fair trade and organic and other things did. Even though organic has its whole other, I'm not going to go into that. USD organic, USDA organic, but I'm not going to go into that in detail. But just to say that, like, what that signaling means, hopefully that'll help push the movement forward.
Exactly, to set a standard.
What you said, Paul, about adaptability in terms at the big level and at the corporate level is important. And there's another concept, which is profit, which is how much profit are we making? Because this is the key driver of the system as it is built now. And we are seeing a shift in that sense. When it comes, for instance, for social entrepreneurship, from the investment perspective, we see a lot more investors going into that direction. If it's not solely in the direction of social entrepreneurship, at least there are ESG components in the investment criteria, which would also push the big players towards a different way of approaching business, of approaching profit, of approaching production, of approaching a dissemination and distribution. And it affects the entire chain in that sense. So this is absolutely important to mention. Now, the question is this shift going to be enough to transform the entire system? Because the system actually needs to be changed and transformed and reinvented if we want to build a future that is decent for everybody, and that aligns with both our purposes and needs, and aligns with the possibility of it existing, since we've been exhausting our resources for so many years. So this is kind of a question that that pushes us to act more efficiently, and that is absolutely important. And signaling is something that is also very important in education, in terms of traditional, everything that should move from traditional to non-traditional needs a signaling system to create this kind of trust, legitimacy, direction that would allow these newcomers to thrive in a field that is not originally theirs, or that was not built for them. And this is where angels of chaos and misfits and disruptors and the people for whom we are actually creating this interchange, this is where these people have a role to play, because in a system that compels you to fit in, they naturally don't. And so naturally they have to create a place. And this is a place between spaces, a space between spaces, a place for everybody else, those who do not fit into molds, a space where we can actually reinvent the way we do things and the way law is done, the way enterprises are built and created, the way business is established, the way countries talk to each other, and so on and so forth. So, and I really want to go back to this very initial idea, which is how you, through your undergrad, created these kind of small blocks of success that you managed to get up to your final year. And this is exactly what we need to do, is that we need to build those kind of small boxes of revolution, of change, of interchange, of transformation, and kind of put them together and design this new picture that we want to see. So from a metaphorical perspective.